sorcerer to Hatshepsut. With this amulet, you and your descendants are endowed by the goddess Isis with the powers of the animals and the elements. You will soar as the falcon soars, run with the speed of gazelles, and command the elements of sky and earth. 3,000 years later, a young science teacher dug up this lost treasure and found she was heir to the secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Cindy Lee, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice.
What were you thinking of? About being a loser?
Yeah. Not winning doesn't mean you're a loser.
In my book, it does.
Welcome back, everyone, to an all-new episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast. It's your old mentor, John S. Drew here, and I'm continuing that journey down the highways and byways of the land, discussing those two iconic television shows of the 70s we love so much, Shazam and the Secrets of Isis. And I'm joined on this never-ending, well, eventually it will end, journey here by the big red cheese himself, Mr. Richard F. Lee. Hey, Richard.
Well, hello, Professor John. It's great to be with you on this new podcast episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast.
It is. And it's sort of a momentous episode in terms of our review of the next issue of the Mighty ISIS, because it's a turning point in ISIS's story arc. Last time around, you mentioned how faithful, or at least fairly faithful, the DC Comics were to the television series, and now suddenly we go off in a whole new direction for ISIS by the time the comic book is done.
That's correct.
Yeah.
In fact, I might even consider that this episode, this edition, or rather the issue of ISIS number 5, is the beginnings of a very psychedelic science fiction approach to the character that it almost borders on Doctor Strange. This is very different. The tone of the comic book goes in a totally different direction from what they had done in the first 4 issues and from the TV series by a long shot. It's no longer really that closely tied to the series, to the television show anymore. And as we're going to see in this issue of number 5 of The Mighty Isis and the future issues, the last remaining ones, it's as though that the character of Isis is seemingly breaking away altogether from her ties to the situations created in the television series.
Yeah. I got to admit, I was disturbed, though, by the cover, because it's Isis in space fighting a spaceship, and I was like, what the hell? With the headline, A New Beginning for Isis, If She Can Survive.
Well, it's going to be hard to survive in the vacuum of space in that outfit.
Yeah, you were talking about the cold of the snow with Isis. Now she's in space.
Yeah. Now, the last time, for our listeners to this podcast, we complained about the TV episode that we gave a low grade to, when they interrupted their story arc and threw in a gorilla. In the comic book, they've interrupted the tone and pattern of the comic series being attached to planet Earth, terra firma, very much following the format of the television show. The high school, Rick Mason, Cindy Lee, and the other characters, and now they threw in a spaceship. A spaceship. Okay, we're tired of being on Earth. Spaceship. If you have writer's block, and it doesn't matter what kind of thing you're writing, a play or a TV show or whatever you're doing creatively, if you hit writer's block, throw in spaceship.
Yeah.
That'll give you absolutely nothing, but you might even get an F in writing class if you're taking a writer's course somewhere. But if you have a writer's block, come up with something outer spacey.
Yeah. Now,
so, what do you see?
Well, I was going to say, did you notice also this is the first issue where we see the visualization of Isis's powers. Every time she's casting a spell now, little glowing triangles materialize around her hands.
Oh. Throw in spaceships and triangles.
I take it you didn't like that.
No, I see the triangles, and I wasn't getting it. What's the point of that? I think that triangles, it's not triangles, they're pyramids.
Well, they're pyramids, yeah.
And the pyramids are very much a thing in occultic medicine. And so that appears to be the direction that the ISIS comic book is going.
Yeah. Now, the story is called Perilous, I should say, Pyramid Power, written by Jack C. Harris, who's been writing a number of the issues, pencils by Mike Vosberg, inks by Vince Colletta. Now, there's also a note, though, that Isis's dwelling was designed by Gamel El Sogba. I thought that was interesting that they went out of their way to bring in somebody else, and I'm really curious what the impetus of all that was.
I don't know. What could have possibly caused them to want to go in such a radically different direction and give her a dwelling?
Her own fortress of solitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to admit, as a kid, I did follow the comic very closely. Mm-hmm. But as a kid, I did not get the story. I didn't get it. I'm into, I can suspend disbelief. I didn't get the story. Mm-hmm. I didn't get the point of the story. I'm not saying that the story is bad. When I say that, I said I didn't get it back then.
Well,
Today, as an adult, I can get some of it now.
Well, when you say the story, do you mean the story arc in terms of the change in Isis, or do you mean this particular story with Aten?
Oh, both. I couldn't get both.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get it as a kid. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what the point of this was. And as you see in this particular issue, the character of Andrea Thomas takes on an angry tone. You mentioned last episode of the podcast how she appeared to be really angry, or rather harsh, in the last couple of frames of the comic issue, that second story. Mm-hmm. And this is really harsh.
Yeah.
Her attitude, what she says. So in this story, we begin with a spaceship on the first page, and there appears to be the observatory on the next page, which looks like the one that was in Los Angeles. I've been to that one, and I'm sure that was the basis for that illustration. It says, the day after tomorrow, the place, an observatory in Southern California. Gee, which one could that be? I don't know if there's that many. I think this is the observatory in Los Angeles that was a popular place to film. And now they put this in California. So they took her out of the East Coast in the last episode, which I'm assuming was a vacation, and now they brought him back to Southern Cal. So they're looking through this giant telescope, and the host of the program that evening is terrified because he sees a spaceship of alien design. Andrea sneaks out and turns into Isis to find out what's going on. Now, this is where they still have a touch of the TV series. Zephyr winds that blow on high, lift me now so I can fly. She flies up, and she says, this may prove to be dangerous. There's no winds to hold me aloft in airless space. So how does she get up there? I mean, I thought... Now, the premise of Isis is that she has control over the elements of earth, sky, wind, water, and so on. What's she doing up in space? There's nothing up there.
Well, she's... the only way she's going to get up there, unless she waits for the ship to come to her. Although I thought it was also just this whole thing of like, there's a spaceship coming. Let me change to Isis. This could be dangerous. It's like, you don't even know yet. Something else too, because this whole story deals with, for the first time, because I don't recall it being told in the other issues, that when she becomes Isis, she's a different person.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I get the impression that more and more she's looking for excuses to be Isis. There are even times in the earlier issues where she's making more of a change into Isis than she would in the TV show.
That's true, but in the TV show, Isis and Andrea are the same person. It's
Right.
never been established that they're different. Here, we're going in a radically different direction.
Yeah.
Very different. We're going to learn Isis and Andrea are two people, John.
Yeah. Although it would explain, because she gets knocked out of the sky by the spaceship and she tries to, settle her fall by doing the incantation again, although she changes it to, lift me now so I won't die or something like that. I was like, wow, that's pretty dark.
Wow, that's dark.
Yeah.
So slow my fall so I won't die. She kaplunk. Lands on a field. She still lands on a field.
Yeah.
Where there's a 55-mile-per-hour sign. Now this is really weird. Isis starts to transform slowly back into Andrea. Now this is what I was talking about. What was lacking in prior issues. I don't think we've seen this in the comic, where you can see her gradually turning from one character into the other. This reminds me of the old Incredible Hulk TV series, where you would see the Hulk, Lou Ferrigno, gradually turned back into David Banner, Bill Bixby. And here it's done over 3 frames, where Isis starts to lose the costume and she still has the amulet on, and then finally the glasses appear on her face. Now she's Andrea again.
Yeah.
I got to admit, in this story, it's kind of cool. That's what I wanted to see before.
It is cool, but it's just also so odd, the whole thing, because again, she's 2 different people, and okay, Isis gets knocked out, so Andrea reverts back, and as we're going to see through the whole issue, she's struggling with things like when she says, she has Isis teach the last class, and we clearly see, if you didn't get it before, Isis isn't teaching the way Andrea does.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And she has her do it because Rick has to let Andrea go. So Andrea's like, I got nothing to lose. I'll let Isis teach the class.
Oh boy. I got to admit, that's a very interesting part of this story. So Andrea comes back to her classroom. She took a long walk. She know Rick and the kids who must have left without her. And, Andrea. And Rick Mason confronts her. Because, where in blue blazes have you been? I almost started to call the state police to start searching for you, he says. And then she says, I had to be alone for a while, think things out. And then she comes to herself and says, why am I telling you all this? What are you doing in my apartment? You're not my keeper.
Yeah.
Now this is getting really testy. And that is true. How did he get into her apartment? That's kind of creepy. He have a key? There's something up besides those late 8 o'clock at night dinners,
Yeah.
Confirms our suspicions. So,
she turns on him pretty quick, too.
Yeah, she turns on him in this issue. He goes, no, I'm not, but I am head of the science department. I have responsibility to the students that teach, and for teachers to stay around during field trips, especially during their last week of teaching. And then she says, last week? Yes, budget cuts force the school board to lay you off. Tomorrow's your last day. I told you the lab's no place for a girl. And then she brings up, cut the chauvinist act, Rick Mason, and get out. Get out, she screams and slams the door at him. Yeah. Now, this is a confrontation that would not have been possible on a children's television show.
True.
It just doesn't work, because these are fictional characters that we grow to like over the course of the first season of the show and into the second season. We know that they work in harmony together. There's seldom a disagreement between them. And the story arc in the comic book goes in a very different direction. It changes the characters altogether. And then she calls them a name, just great, just what I needed. That Drip. I guess he's a Drip. I don't know. And so she decides to become Isis forever. Almighty Isis forever. And then she shows up as Isis, erasing her life as Andrea Thomas. Now, does this mean she still has Andrea Thomas's memories, I guess?
Well, she must enough in order to teach the science class and such.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, again, the ambiguity in the Shazam universe was that Billy Batson and Captain Marvel were 2 different people in the very beginning, that's how it was.
Right.
It wasn't always that way. The first episode of Whiz Comics was a little strange. Billy Batson was Captain Marvel. Pretty clear. But then as the story wore on, Billy was his own person. Captain Marvel was somebody else. That when Billy called on power as a Captain Marvel, Billy Batson would literally disappear, probably to the Rock of Eternity. Captain Marvel would take his place. And then that ambiguity, they tried to keep it alive in the Shazam comic from the early 70s. It didn't quite work out because I think fans of the comic pretty much accepted that Billy and Captain Marvel were really the same person with the same memories and thoughts. And that's how the TV series went. And that's something that we would like, that they're the same person. They're not somebody completely different. Here, you have now establishing if they were the same person, Andrea and Isis are no longer the same person. They're split in two. Maybe it's like a Jekyll and Hyde. Maybe it's like the Incredible Hulk. Banner and the Hulk, they're supposed to be the mutated. The Hulk is the mutated Banner. But there have been some alternate storytelling out there for the Hulk, where Banner and the Hulk are different. Different beings. Like, where in the world did that come from? Here, I don't know about that kind of storytelling. What do you think?
I don't like it only because it's established in the TV show. It's an interesting thing for the comic book, and maybe it was a way to sort of differentiate the comic from the TV show in their own way, DC. But since that wasn't established in the TV show, I'm not a big fan of this. At the same time, I will say it's an interesting story twist, but I'm not finding it something that, I don't know, that long-term I would enjoy. And the thing is, since she makes this decision, you know that it can't be entirely permanent. Obviously, we've only got a few more issues to go before it's canceled. Because at the very end, when she decides to leave, she takes some of Andrea's clothes, she packs up, makes it look like she's definitely gone. And Rick and Cindy show up at her apartment, and Rick's like, I'm going to find her, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Exactly. This is really weird. So Isis shows up at school, and Dr. Barnes says, "What are you doing here?" And it's Miss Isis, Mr. Barnes. Not even Doctor, it's Mr. in this timeline. In this issue, it says, speaking of Miss Thomas, look at her replacement, and that turns out to be Isis, of course. Now, what happens later, she meets this strange being, the supreme god of the sun, god of Egypt and the world. Oh, boy.
Well, you still got to have that battle. You still got to have that fight. And we're once again back to the gods.
Battle of the gods, and then her hands form the pyramids, and she zaps him with something.
Yeah.
And he zaps her back. And then what happens is that her amulet and everything seems to fall off of her. She's just wearing a white tennis dress at one point in the issue.
Yeah.
Like, okay, how did that happen? So, but bottom line to this story is, as we're running short on time, that the last frame says, "Thus it shall be, the goddess Isis has returned forever." So this means that Andrea is officially dead.
Well, that's the thing. Is she dead? Is she lost somewhere? I mean, she certainly, this is the interesting thing too. If she knows that Isis sort of supplants her and another person takes over, like, where did this suddenly all of a sudden happen that Andrea's willing to just give up her life, essentially, to allow Isis to live? I mean, I know things were bad. She lost her job and stuff, but in essence, she kind of committed suicide.
Yeah?
If you think about it.
When you think about it, yeah, you're right. And this is where the story takes a real dark turn.
Yeah.
Now, it's speculation as we're going to move on from the comic in a second, but maybe it's speculation on my part here, that as the comic takes a darker tone, it might have lost what few readers it already had. And it only lasted a few more issues after this one, and finally, abruptly, was discontinued.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been a factor. They decided, let's take Isis in a radically different direction. Let's ignore the TV show. Let's cut ties with it and do something completely different with the character.
Well, they don't entirely cut ties, because as we're going to see, Rick goes looking for Andrea. He even shows up at Andrea's mother's house.
That's right. We're going to see that happen. And, dear, I just can't help but think that the Rick Mason character really doesn't serve a purpose in that storyline anymore.
I agree.
Just trying to find her, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the writers wanted to create some sense of drama. It doesn't seem to work for me.
Right.
No, I'm interested in the story. I read those. I actually took them as they were. They're okay, but I can't help but put the actors from the TV show into the comic and trying to see them play these parts in the comic book, because it began with a series and ended up in the comic. And I just don't quite see it. I don't see the actors who are playing these characters performing the lines and the story that these writers at DC Comics did for the characters.
Well, I certainly couldn't see the explosion between Andrea and Rick on the TV show.
No, I could not see that. I think that takes them completely out of character and ruins the dynamic that we've witnessed in the episodes of the Secrets of Isis all this time.
Yeah, I agree. But it'll be interesting to see. We've got 3 more issues to go.
That's right. So we have a new episode of the TV series to discuss.
Yes, we do. We've got the episode called No Drums, No Trumpet. It's episode 11. The production number was 82021, written by Arthur H. Nadell and directed by Hollingsworth Morse. So we've got 2 familiar names at the writer and director side.
Yes, we do. We've seen their names appear many times on Filmation work. Shooting began for this episode on September 12, 1975. In the school science fair, one runner-up is Irv Kaplan, the name of Filmation's animation background supervisor. Now later, the scene with Isis trapping the hijacker in the jail cell was filmed backwards.
Oh.
Interesting. A great little special effect we're tipped off to it there. I think when we see the episode that it's pretty obvious how that was done.
Right.
So we have a big guest cast in this episode. There's Mark Lambert as Fred White. I think his name is supposed to be pronounced Whiting.
Sounds like that, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder, how do they come up with these character names? Fred Whiting and actor Christopher Norris as Dorothy Biter. I think it's Beater.
Okay.
And Michael Green as Jim Danch, and Albert Reed as Dr. Barnes again. Now, again, Albert Reed is listed as a guest cast member, and he was a regular. But they confined him to guest cast category. I just don't understand that. But he was really a series regular, and his character of Dr. Barnes frequently was referred to on The Secrets of Isis, even when he did not appear.
Right.
So regarding Michael Green, he was a close friend of David Carradine. He appeared in 2 episodes of Kung Fu and provided the flutes played by David throughout the series. Now that's interesting trivia. Now regarding actress Christopher Norris, following a minor career slump in the 90s, she went to college and received a BA in psychology and theater at Antioch University. She appeared in Airport 75.
It's been a long time since I've seen that.
I don't remember when I last saw it. It was a few years back. I mean, disaster movies were a big staple in the 1970s, as you remember.
Yeah.
Airport, the Poseidon Adventure, the Towering Inferno. It was a very dystopian time in big movie entertainment.
Yeah.
Where you went and saw the movie, you were drained and emotionally exhausted because some disaster was happening in front of you, and that was the entertainment. And I'm sure that there are people today who wonder, what were people in the 1970s thinking? Everything was so downbeat. Airport 75, Airport 79, Airport 70, I don't know. Towering Inferno, buildings burning up, ships sinking, planes crashing. I mean, this was very dystopian. We were on the down low here. I mean, things were just depressing in the motion picture business. But by contrast, there were shows like Secrets of Isis that we're talking about today that were upbeat. People wanted to not have to look at something so depressing all of the time.
Right. I did like this opening shot because we clearly establish that this is Larkspur High School, and if I remember correctly, there's a sign even saying it was established in 1938.
That was a good year. 1938. I guess the Great Depression era projects really worked.
Well, if there's any doubt, again, like we said with the comic book, last week we were in New Hampshire, and this time around we're back in California. Larkspur is in California.
I wonder if they intentionally meant that. I kind of think they had to, because they had that close-up, a clear shot of that plaque, and they could have changed it to something else, I suppose, and they didn't do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
What happens here is at the very beginning, we see the opening shot of Dr. Barnes wearing the most interesting sports jacket I've seen in a while. And these sports jackets still exist. He's grading projects at the high school science fair.
Miss Thomas, Mr. Mason. Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
Hi, Fred. Tell me, how's our favorite radio ham? Not ham, Mr. Mason. We're amateur radio operators. Oh, my apologies. Apologies accepted.
As a kid, I didn't know what a high schooler was, John. High school, what's that? I heard the term. What was a high school? You could not have. If you could throw in a 40-year-old in that role, I would not have known better when you're 8 years old. But this guy is an overage teenager, okay?
Yeah, he definitely is.
Yeah, we all owe a big apology to Dick Clark.
I did like this, though, because Fred, his whole science experiment is the fact that he's an amateur radio operator, and I like how he schools Rick in the terminology, because Rick's calling him a ham operator.
A ham operator.
Well, that's kind of the slang for, the amateur radio operators, and they don't really appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess they don't.
Yeah.
They really don't. Now, a correction to myself, as I'm reviewing this episode, it's not Dr. Barnes who's wearing the sports jacket. It's Rick Mason wearing the sports jacket. Dr. Barnes is wearing this awful plasma. Well, we're going to get to the fashion statements later, but these things leap off at me when you're seeing it with such high resolution on a TV screen that I know the producers of The Secrets of Isis would never have anticipated, John.
Yeah.
In 40 years, we would be seeing it in such crystal clarity on a nice digital screen. But that's the charm of the show. It's preserved for posterity. We're able to see the fashions. We're able to see how people looked back in the day. But we're seeing a situation set up for us as we're watching this. You have this teenager, this high schooler. He wants to show off his science experiment. He's eager to show them. And then we're going to be given our high schooler who's in trouble for the week and a lesson that he needs to learn.
Right, when he doesn't get his way and win the competition because the radio signals he sends through to Dr. Barnes doesn't work. Now, there was one thing, though. Dr. Barnes, at one point, thanks the school for their hospitality. Isn't it his school?
Yeah, that's a good point. Hospitality? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Hospitality? He's not a guest there, right?
No.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe they are all a guest at this science fair because this is a Larkspur High School and these people actually work at another high school.
Maybe that's a possibility. Yeah.
Oh, dear. Maybe that's it.
Well, Fred becomes upset because he didn't take first place, so he tears off in his convertible, nearly clipping Rick's car, and Andrea then asks for Rick's keys as she goes off after him in Rick's car.
Well, I don't know. See, Andrea and Rick have something going on. They have keys to each other's apartments, apparently, and keys to each other's, well, she doesn't really have the keys to his car, but he feels comfortable with letting her drive the car.
Right.
Now, when she goes after him in the vehicle, don't these curves on the road look a little familiar, like perhaps you've seen them on previous episodes of Shazam and Isis, maybe?
Well, they look more familiar to you. They all look the same to me.
California roads, they all look the same to me. Oh, dear. So Fred drives too fast, and he runs off the road. This is before road rage became in vogue, I guess. Because when people are upset, they'll just take off. Why is the kid upset? He's got a nice car. When I was a teenager in high school, I never had a car like that. Heck, I don't even have a car like that now. What's he complaining about? Oh, jeez. But he's really booking it on these roads.
Yeah.
I mean, he is going as fast as they can. And oh, wait a second. Is Andrea with Rick in this scene? Because I've noticed watching this, there's a hand or an arm in the vehicle at the same time. I mean, there's little cool things like that I catch. That's right. Okay, I had to go back and I'm watching this as we're talking. There's somebody else in the car with her. And it's Fred, actually. It's the teenager of the week who's in trouble. This scene was taken from the clip of Andrea driving the vehicle is taken from a clip that would appear later when Fred is with her in the car.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah, an insert shot that doesn't belong there. Oh, jeez. You see it in the best movies, too. You see where the wrong insert clip is put in there. But apparently the editors thought, oh, we need a scene of Andrea actually driving the car with a close-up shot. And they decided, let's pull this clip that appears later. The viewers are 8 years old. They're not going to care or notice. So Fred drives too fast. He runs off the road. And then he, ends up dangerously on the edge of this little cliff. I got to admit, even though this is a kid show, that is kind of scary. It's scary to me even looking at these old clips.
Right.
The vehicle is right on the edge. Now, I got to believe that they set the camera up that way to make it look like that. Because it's pretty darn convincing to me. Because it does look like he's just right on the edge. Andrea pulls over in Rick's cargo vehicle. What happens is, when she comes to a stop, she hears an SOS from the honk of Fred's car. Part of me, it starts to believe that the vibrations from the honks would have caused the car to go over.
Almighty ISIS. Lift me now so I can fly. Almighty wind that blows so far, now use your strength to push this car.
I sure am grateful to you, Isis. I was driving too fast, way too fast. Not thinking about what I was doing.
What were you thinking of?
About being a loser?
You know, not winning doesn't mean you're a loser.
In my book, it does. I'm afraid I broke a few parts in that slide. Yeah. I'll make my way up the hill and start walking back to town. Thanks. Thanks for saving me.
Now, Rick and Cindy catch up with him, while Andrea comes from the opposite direction in Rick's car. Okay. Andrea offers to take Fred and Dorothy, his friend, with her, and for Rick to make arrangements for Fred's car. Rick is off to find a phone booth. Now, we take our smartphones for granted, John. So many plots of the 1970s TV shows were built around being stranded without being able to get to a phone or finding a phone booth. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what's great, let me throw out, because you're a fan of $6 Million Man, as I am. Frequently, they would have to pull over to the side of the road and use a payphone at a phone booth. Now, Oscar Goldman had a phone in his car or in his briefcase. But that was a common plot theme in the 1970s, which today is an obsolete reference that most kids are not going to get because they have smartphones.
Yeah. Yeah. But now, one thing, did you notice this, though? Because you mentioned Dorothy. Now, Dorothy's the one who wins first prize at the competition. she's not seen, I don't think, in those early scenes, or if she is, she's just so quietly in the background. It's kind of weird. And then next thing you know, there's Dorothy, and she's driving back with Andrea and Fred, and they're talking about ghost towns. It was just a little weird.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't notice that. She was not even there when she wins first prize.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe the actress wasn't available that day. Maybe she was off in the trailer or something. I don't know. But, yeah, you're right. She happens to show up. Is she showing up out of guilt that she won?
I don't know. Yeah.
Boy, there really is nothing around here. Ah, but there is. I've spent a lot of time exploring out here. Exploring? What's there to explore? Caves, creeks, even an old ghost town. A ghost town? Oh, Miss Thomas, could we go by there? I don't know. There have been a few stories about some very strange things happening out there.
What kind of strange things?
Eerie noises, wagons that move by themselves, even reports of ghosts.
Now, I'm sure you don't believe in ghosts, Miss Thomas.
Okay, you two. Ghost town, here we come.
We interrupt our program for this bulletin. The Larkspur police have reported another warehouse robbery. A blue panel truck was seen leaving the area. Witnesses reported that the rear license plate was missing. The public is asked to call the police if a vehicle answering this description is seen.
Now, that's another trope from the 1970s. Have you noticed that too? It's not unique to the 70s. You're listening to music, and then we interrupt this broadcast to let you know that something terrible has happened. And, of course, the characters who listen to that end up becoming a part of it. Have you caught that trope?
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, these days they wouldn't have that kind of trope because nobody listens to the radio.
Hey, speak for yourself. I have to do something while I'm bored. Oh, jeez.
Listen to podcasts.
Podcasts, that's right. That's right. Or we get our news from Facebook updates or something like that.
Yeah, see?
See, now I don't think that could be used today in a motion picture or TV show, but that trope was very popular in old movies and old television shows. And it works here. It works here. So now they go to a nearby ghost town. They go to the ghost town. And Andrea pulls into this ghost town where it just so happens that the robbers are hiding out. How convenient.
Very
and they
convenient.
see Andrea arrive. Oh, classic. And they're being followed by a stagecoach going all by itself. Now, that's another trope. Maybe out of Scooby-Doo, perhaps. They're walking along. Some vehicle follows them. They turn around and look, and it stops. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Well, we get to Act 2, and now we've got the added wrinkle of Rick's car being out of gas and Fred's radio still not working. So Andrea and the two decide to explore around the town and stuff. And like you said, there's the rolling carriage and a slamming door.
Yeah, a slamming door.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, all the kind of little things to, you know, like you said, Scooby-Doo or Brady Bunch, something like that.
No, I kind of like this. I really kind of liked it. The only thing that kind of takes me out of the story it doesn't take me out of it so much. It's just, it's not that scary. And I like scary things as a kid. Never bothered me. I love scary things. It's bright daylight out. Things don't happen that are scary in bright daylight, okay?
Right.
If this were dark, if this story were plotted in the evening, yeah, that'd be pretty scary.
Right. Yeah. Well, Andrea looks inside one of the buildings, and she's trying to make a change to ISIS, but she sees that the kids are observing her. So she starts to climb the stairs, and they give out, and she falls through.
Yeah, that was a pretty stunning moment. She almost got hurt there. Oh, man, we can't let our heroine get hurt.
Yeah.
So she dusts herself off, and Fred notices that the blue van that was mentioned on the radio announcement concerning the warehouse robbery. Now, Andrea realizes that the scares were done by the robbers to frighten people away. Now, then the suspects emerge, and the head of the group escorts Fred, Dorothy, and Andrea off to the side while the gang loads up merchandise. And she realizes at that point her amulet is missing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they sure went to a lot of trouble to try to scare these people. They're responsible for the rolling stagecoach. They're responsible for the slamming doors. Why would anybody take the time to have a setup like that? This is not quite as bad as the elaborate death traps that the villains have for Batman and Robin every week.
Right.
Why would anyone go to the trouble of doing all those things? Oh, well.
Did you notice, too, the truck was holding a pair of motorcycles?
I actually didn't notice that. They're holding a pair of okay, no.
Yeah. I don't know. I was like thinking it was going to play more of a role in the episode, but they're just there. You know? Andrea tries to get Fred to think about why the radio isn't working, and he figures out that the antenna is shorting out. Knowing this, he might be able to send a signal.
So in the meanwhile, Andrea gets up and stands there for a bit and gets Fred to go out. So to try to get something from the cargo truck to work on the radio. And he figures out it's shorting, the antenna shorted out, and so on.
Mayday, this is W6TZY with an emergency. Does anyone copy? We are in trouble. Mayday. Mayday, this is an emergency transmission.
Fred!
We are in trouble. Mayday. Mayday, please send the police to the ghost town outside Larkspur. This is W6TZY. Does anyone copy?
W6TZY. This is WB6KUC. I copy. I am calling the Highway Patrol. Please confirm your location.
Larkspur, ghost town sound, please.
I have them on the landline. They are on their way. I will continue to monitor this frequency. Good luck. W6TZY, WB6KUC.
And that's when Rick decides to turn his car towards the ghost town.
Now, I like how this is set up.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of unusual. It's a rather creative thing where you have Andrea and Rick driving each other's cars, for one.
Right.
That's just something thrown in. The writer didn't have to do that. It's a very strange choice to begin with. He didn't have to do that. He could have set it up in a different way where they're driving their own respective cars for the entire story. I don't know if it was really necessary to serve a story purpose to do that, but that's just a different feel to it, I suppose. But in the meantime, now the police are on the way as the leader is unable to get the car started. At this point, Andrea, she didn't know that she had her amulet was missing, but she ends up recovering it. So she had time to sneak into the place where she lost her amulet and found it on the floor. That would have been interesting if they would have carried that story part, that little subplot, a little bit longer. I know they didn't have a lot of time to tell this story, but for Andrea to be without her amulet for an extended period of time, not being able to rely on the powers of ISIS, to draw that out just a little bit more.
Right.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have.
That adds some extra tension. Now, here's something established. Now we know she can't turn into ISIS without the amulet on her person. She does not have the independent powers to call on ISIS without that amulet. So she and the amulet are not really tied together very well. Would that mean that anybody else who came upon that amulet, if they were to call upon the powers of ISIS, if they knew what it was, could do it?
You know, that would be interesting if somebody got the hold of the amulet in an episode and became ISIS.
Yeah. That would have been really neat.
Yeah.
To do. Now, the amulet is right there. She finds it, she puts it on, and she becomes ISIS.
Mighty ISIS.
And the leader is running away. Now, here's the scene where Andrea, as ISIS, chants for the old collapsed jail to come together. conveniently to capture him.
Oh, spirits of the past and gone from sight, arrest this man and stop his flight.
Now, Isis, she'll fly off to go after the blue getaway van. But before that, this is the shot that we mentioned in the beginning of the review. That was shot backwards.
Yeah.
It had to have been shot backwards, and the actor is very good. He just does everything in reverse. That's good acting.
Isis, you always seem to be around when I need you.
Well, twice in one day is pushing it a little. I have some unfinished business. Please tell the officers that I'll have some more passengers for them in a moment.
Isis flies off to go after the blue getaway van and summons a cloudy fog to blind the driver. And so the police arrive and get the perpetrators, all without the benefit of drawn firearms. How did they work in those days in the 70s? Didn't have drawn firearms. They didn't have bulletproof vests. I don't know how they did it.
Clouds descend, and in your wake, surround this truck, so there's no escape.
Now, if I were Isis, I'd stick around a little bit longer till they make sure those guys are secure, but she has to run off somewhere, okay? So, anyway, Rick and Cindy arrive at the ghost town while Isis tells Rick hurriedly to have that gas gauge checked.
Yeah.
Oh, this is another, just like the last episode. Last episode, something that Andrea would say that Isis says, or Isis says that Andrea would say. Oh, it's another wink to the camera.
Right.
And I'm not entirely convinced it's always necessary per episode, for each episode, but okay. Anyway, the group meets up with Andrea, and Dorothy offers to give her prize to Fred, who says that she did, but he says, "You did win," and now Fred does not feel like a loser anymore. Oh, boy. So, meantime, when Andrea comes back, she offers to give everyone a ride in her car while commenting to Rick that needs to have that gas gauge fixed. Yeah. Oh, dear. So, I think this is what happens in this episode that was a little bit different from the prior one. It was Andrea at first who said that about the fish hat that Rick Mason wore, about his cap, that
right.
fishing cap. And then Isis comes along and says something about the fishing hat. Here, it's a little bit opposite. You have Isis first mentioning the gas gauge, and then Andrea mentioning the gas gauge. That makes sense. But they're still using the same idea from the last episode.
Yeah.
So what I like about this, I remember this from 40 years ago when it ran, when the show played. As the group walks away, Andrea breaks the fourth wall, looks into the camera, and with a wink, a la George Reeves from The Adventures of Superman, when George Reeves used to do that. I like that. I thought that was cute.
It was, definitely. I liked it.
And the show was winking at us, but they're winking at us kids. They didn't do that all the time. They didn't abuse it all the time. They would do this from time to time. I like that. And they obviously copied George Reeves. It was a homage to George Reeves' Adventures of Superman. At this point in time, I did not know about the Adventures of Superman yet. I knew about it probably a year later when it played in reruns on weekday mornings. And as much as I was a Superman fan, I didn't really get hooked on the Adventures of Superman like people in the 1950s would have. I liked it. It was good. But at least the Secrets of Isis was able to homage that show. And I thought they did great.
Yeah. No, I agree. Now, the stunts.
Well, it looks like Joanna Cameron was the one who fell down those stairs. I don't think they used a stunt woman there. I thought the editing was really well. It sold us on the fact that she went through those stairs. It looked real to me, and I think it was her.
I think so, too. I agree. Fashion statements. Now, I originally said nothing out of the ordinary, but then you had some comments about Rick and Dr. Barnes' outfits.
Yeah, it's not just the wide lapels that they wore, but the patterns. Now, those things still exist, believe it or not. They still exist. Not the wide pattern, not the wide lapels I meant. Not the wide lapels. But those patterns still exist in men's clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little loud, but yeah, I could handle that, I guess. Hey, I used to wear stuff like that in the 70s. Who am I to judge, all right?
Oh.
So now the clothing that they wore, that Fred wore in this episode, was not out of the ordinary for sure.
Right.
I think that passes for today. I don't think they wore big bell bottoms. I didn't catch that. I think the Dorothy character did wear something like that. It looked like that. Her clothing appeared to be a little dated to me, something that would stick out from the 1970s. Everyone else, typical.
We will return to ISIS after these messages.
In 1836, he moved like a shadow through the forests of Montana and Canada. As a warrior, he was terrifying. For the white man's treachery, he kidnapped a beautiful girl and young boy, and for almost a year, he outwitted the mountain men who were chasing him. His name was Winterhawk. Now Charles B. Pierce brings this legend to the wide screen as one of the epic adventure films of all time. Winterhawk, rated PG.
Now playing at theaters and drive-ins everywhere. Check your local newspaper.
When people come to Denio's Farmers Market, it's for more than just fresh lettuce from the field and newly picked grapes and ripe red apples. They come for...
Mister, the horse hasn't been born yet that can wear out this saddle.
Be careful now. The coffee's hot.
And the Denio boys saying...
Can I help you, ma'am?
And, oh yes, Tee-Hee the Clown blowing up balloons for the kids. They come because it's a fun day for the entire family, the old-fashioned way where people are glad to see you. Denio's Farmers Market every weekend in Roseville.
Well, we normally think of this hospital as a very big place, but it can become very, very small, even petty.
Doctor, the next time somebody comes to you with a story about me like that, you send them to me.
As the World Turns expands to 1 hour of compelling drama starting December 1st, followed by The Guiding Light.
And now, back to ISIS.
What about a moral for this one? Is there a moral to this one?
Well, that's the thing. We don't have the moral for this one. And many of the morals we've been featuring are part of the DVD set that was released a number of years back. And this was not on that collection. In fact, we're going to be finding in the next bunch of episodes, and in particular when we get to the second season, it's going to be very spotty that we have any audio of the morals. But, you know, based on the way the episode here is, I would have to say it's simply that not everyone can be a winner, and that learning from a loss is as important as the win itself. Learning from mistakes helps you grow as a person. What do you think of that?
That's a good encapsulation. I think you're right about that. It does help grow as a person, and that's a serious message. I can agree with that. We don't like to lose, but part of winning also is learning how to accept failure.
Right.
And not getting too big-headed when you do win. And that you can't win every time. Now, of course, in my situation, I win all the time, John. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I'm not much of a big-time winner. Now, the question, though, is, does this hold up, though?
I think the moral to me does hold up. Yeah. I think it does. I think it holds up quite well. It's a little exaggerated. I think it's a little crazy for somebody who gets second place to storm off, drive his car really fast. He's that disappointed he got in the second place.
I don't know about that. I've been to some academic competitions where I've seen some less than graceful winners. Or losers, I should say.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
It's one of the things I've got to, always remind my kids. Not that they would. They're actually very good about it. But just, even if they do win, to be gracious about the win.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah.
You're right. Because, as an adult, I've seen a lot of sore losers. There's no question about that. And stakes are very high for people for when they get older. Sometimes, depending on what type of competition it is, where there's really high stakes, I think people can be really upset, sore losers. Now, in the legal profession, I guarantee that. There is really no such thing as a good loser.
Right.
I mean, when you lose, you are really ticked off at the other side. You don't forgive them. I mean, oh, man. So, yeah, I think the moral holds up, and there's a lot of grown-ups who could benefit from a story like this.
Yeah. All right, so let me ask you then, on a scale of 1 to 5 tuts, how would you rate this episode?
Well, I think it's a good adventure. I like the surprises in it. Now, Andrea without the powers of Isis that I touched on earlier, for a time where she doesn't have her powers, I like that theme. I really liked it. I wish that would have been drawn out a little bit more. I like that theme a lot. And it would have been even more interesting if the bad guys would have caught her finding her amulet or somehow kept it from her. That would have been great. There wasn't time to do that, but that would have been a good story. I really liked it. And the touch of the ghost town at first, oh, that was good. I liked it. Now, presumably no drums, no trumpets means that there is often no fanfare when someone loses. Now, I didn't catch that really at first, but yeah, I think that's what it means. Or when someone does something really good. No fanfare. So I would have to rate this episode 5 out of 5 tuts. We promised our listeners in the last podcast episode that we anticipated that this episode, no drums, no trumpets, would be much, much better than the one that we reviewed last time. And I think that that's the rating that I have to give it. From a 2 out of 5 last time to 5 out of 5 tuts today, yeah.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Same rating, 5 out of 5 tuts. Now, you were pointing out some of the similarities with this episode and last, the winking nod, the use of the same line that Rick goes, hey, Isis said that, or hey, Andrea said that. But one thing this episode has over the last one is follow through with our main character, who the whole point of the moral, the whole point of the story is about. We see a follow through with Fred where he's able to be part of remedying the situation Andrea and he and Dorothy are in.
Yeah, in a way, it's not really Isis who rescues them. It's Fred.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch. That's a nice touch. Fred is the hero of this story.
I mean, Isis holds them off.
Right.
Until the police arrive. But it's really Fred who saves them.
Yes. See, this is good storytelling. This is exactly right. This is what we were talking about, what the last episode lacked so much. This episode really pulls off very well.
Yeah, I agree.
It does. It just does an outstanding job. The last episode, for benefit of our podcast listeners, was the show-off, which we rated very low, whereas no drums, no trumpets, we're rating it very high. So we can have a set of episodes where one is really bad or really good, and then the next one can be really bad or really good. There's not a whole lot of consistency there where you're looking at a stretch of episodes and they all of a sudden go bad. Here you have a mixed bag. One good, one bad, one good. I don't know. The future is going to have to... We'll see what the future holds on this show when we do future episodes. But really, this contrasts so sharply with what we covered last time.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking about the script. The script is better. The pacing is better. The characters are better. They really are.
Yeah.
And you're right, John. They followed through with the character, the teenage boy of the week who's in trouble, realizing that he was able to get control of himself and turn it around. He ends up being the true hero of the story, although there's no fanfare.
There's still no fanfare, even at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the future, our next episode, we have an insecure, overweight girl running for school council, stealing Mr. Mason's boat as a publicity stunt. So Isis must call upon Captain Marvel to help with the rescue. So we've got Captain Marvel, we've got Isis, we're coming to the end of this first season for Isis, and pretty soon we're going to have our rotating episodes of Captain Marvel and Isis again. But in the meantime, we've got a guest visitor here in the form of Captain Marvel in the episode Funny Gal.
And it's certainly not the last team up that Isis and Captain Marvel will have, but it's among the first ones of this first season of The Secrets of Isis, and it's going to be a very good episode. So I hope that all of our listeners will tune into the next podcast.
Yes, definitely do. And in the meantime, head on over to our Facebook page, like it, comment on the episodes there, or write us at shazamisispodcast@gmail.com, or visit us on the web at shazamisispodcast.com, where you can also find all the other episodes we've done so far, our reviews of Shazam, of ISIS, our interviews with those behind the scenes. So make sure you're heading on over there and checking it out. So until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Richard, everyone, take care.
Take care, everyone, and give us a like on Facebook.